Most people walk around feeling drained, foggy, and worn out, not because they didn't get enough sleep, but because they didn't wake up with a reason to rise. There's a profound difference between physical exhaustion and what I call purpose fatigue, that quiet, persistent heaviness that weighs on your body when your spirit has no direction. You might think you're tired because you've been working hard, but the truth is, you're not just physically tired, you're mentally and emotionally unfulfilled. You're not exhausted from effort, you're depleted from a lack of meaning. When you wake up each day with nothing compelling pulling you forward, even the smallest tasks can feel like a mountain. Getting out of bed feels like dragging yourself through cement. You hit snooze, not because you're lazy, but because your brain hasn't been given a real reason to get excited. It's not the sleep you're lacking, it's the spark. That sense of being lit up inside. The sense that what you're doing matters, that you're building towards something, contributing to something, becoming something more than you were yesterday. You ever notice how people can work 16-hour days on something they love and feel more alive than someone who just worked a 4-hour shift doing something that drains them? That's because purpose fuels energy in a way that sleep never will. The human nervous system isn't just fueled by food, rest, and water. It's powered by vision. When you strip away the vision, the mission, the why, all that's left is routine. And routine without purpose is just a slow death. That's why you feel tired after a long weekend binging shows or scrolling endlessly on your phone. You weren't physically working, but you still feel drained. Why? Because there was no alignment between what you were doing and who you're becoming. There was no direction to your time, no intention behind your energy, and when you spend your life drifting, even doing nothing becomes exhausting. Fatigue, real fatigue, isn't always about overworking, it's often about underliving. You're not tired because your calendar is full. You're tired because your calendar is meaningless. Meetings, errands, social obligations, and scrolling through highlights of other people's lives, none of that fills your tank. It just occupies your attention and leaves your soul untouched. Purpose, on the other hand, reignites every cell in your body. When you're dialed into something that matters, your physiology shifts, your posture changes, your tone of voice lifts, your eyes light up, you become magnetic. Not just to others, but to your own inner power. And that power doesn't just make you feel awake, it makes you feel alive. Think about it. The last time you were in love with a dream, or obsessed with a goal, or fully immersed in something you cared about, how much sleep did you need? Not much, right? You couldn't wait to get out of bed, you were wired with anticipation, pumped with adrenaline. You didn't need motivation, you were the motivation. That was a magic. That was purpose in action. But most people don't live like that anymore. Somewhere along the way, they stopped dreaming, they got caught in the grind. Life became about survival instead of significance. They traded what made them feel alive for what made them feel safe. And now they wonder why they're tired all the time. Why even after a full night's sleep, they still wake up exhausted. It's because sleep doesn't replenish a soul that's disconnected. It doesn't restore a spirit that's starved of vision. Only purpose can do that. If you give your body rest, but you don't give your heart a reason to rise, don't be surprised when your energy never returns. Don't be surprised when you can't find that drive you once had. Drive doesn't come from being more disciplined. It comes from being more connected to something bigger than you. Something that pulls you out of your excuses and demands your greatness. The truth is, most people have never been taught how to find that kind of purpose. They were told to go to school, get a job, pay the bills, and stay in line. They were taught how to survive, not how to come alive. And when aliveness isn't part of the equation, fatigue becomes the natural outcome. Not because the human body is weak, but because the human soul has been ignored. You don't need another stimulant. You don't need another nap. What you need is to be challenged again, to be stirred, to be confronted with what's missing in your life. But spiritually, you need something that scares you and excites you in the same breath. Something that demands your focus, commands your energy, and forces you to become the version of yourself that you know you're capable of being. Because when you find that something, when you tap into that deeper why, everything changes, the heaviness lifts, the fog clears, the spark returns, and suddenly you realize you were never really tired at all. We live in a world that tells us to rest when we're tired, to take a break when we're drained, to step away when our energy is low. And yes, rest has its place. The body needs recovery. The brain needs downtime. But the deeper truth that nobody talks about, the truth that can change your life, is this: energy doesn't just come from rest. Energy comes from meaning. It comes from purpose. It comes from living your life in alignment with something that matters to you. You can sleep for 10 hours and still wake up exhausted if the life you're waking up to doesn't excite you. You can go on vacation, lie on a beach for a week, turn off all your devices and still feel empty when you come home because you didn't recharge what really matters, your inner fire. And that fire isn't stoked by naps or Netflix or bubble baths. It's stoked by passion, by drive, by a cause that pulls you forward. There are people in this world who work 12, 14, even 16 hours a day and have more energy at the end of it than someone who worked 4 hours doing something they hate. Why? Because when you're doing something that fills your soul, when your actions align with your values, when your efforts feed your mission, energy flows through you like electricity. You're not running on willpower. You're running on purpose power, and that power is endless. Look at the greatest creators, leaders, inventors, visionaries. Do you think they were bouncing from one self-care routine to the next, trying to summon energy out of thin air? No, they were obsessed with a vision, consumed by a dream, committed to something so meaningful to them that fatigue couldn't touch them. Their energy wasn't stolen by long hours or setbacks because their soul was on fire. The real burnout doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from doing too little of what matters. That's the burnout nobody talks about. The burnout of boredom, of stagnation, of living life on autopilot, of waking up every day to a life that feels like a repeat of yesterday with no deeper reason behind it all. That kind of life slowly drains you from the inside out. You go through the motions. You smile when you're supposed to. You show up, but you're not really there. And your energy, it dies a quiet death every single day. But when you have meaning, when you're lit up by a purpose, everything changes. You don't need someone to tell you to hustle. You move because you must. You don't count hours. You count impact. You don't shrink when it gets hard. You lean in. Because you know that what you're doing is connected to something that matters more than comfort, more than convenience, more than rest. People think they're tired because they've been grinding. But often, they're tired because they've been grinding without direction. They've been busy but not intentional. Active but not fulfilled. And it's that lack of meaning that robs them of energy more than any to-do list ever could. Because when your heart isn't in it, your energy won't be either. You can fake enthusiasm for a while. You can fake interest. But you can't fake soul and energy. Real, lasting energy comes from the soul. This is why some people feel more alive when they're giving, building, creating, teaching, leading. They're pouring energy out, but because it's meaningful, the universe pours energy right back in. It's a loop. A circuit, a current. The more aligned you are with what truly matters to you, the more that current flows freely. You become a conduit for energy, not just a consumer of it. If you feel tired all the time, the first question you need to ask yourself isn't, am I getting enough sleep? It's, am I living a life that fuels me? Because if the answer is no, then no amount of rest will ever be enough. Your body might get up, but your spirit will stay asleep. And that's not how you were designed to live. You weren't built just to survive Monday through Friday, counting down to weekends or waiting for vacations to feel alive. You were built to live lit up. You were built to contribute, to create, to chase down something that scares you and excites you at the same time. Meaning gives your actions weight, it gives your time value, it gives your work heart. Without it, you're just checking boxes. But with it, you're on a mission. And when you're on a mission, fatigue takes a back seat. Challenges still show up, but they don't knock you out, they shape you. Because now, every moment matters. Every task is purpose. Every step is connected to something bigger. And that connection is what powers you in a way that rest never could. There's a difference between living and existing, a difference between routine and destiny. And too many people have confused the two. They've mistaken habit for purpose, comfort for calling, and routine for fulfillment. They wake up every day, brush their teeth, go to work, check off tasks, scroll through screens, eat, sleep, repeat, and they think that's life. But it's not life, it's maintenance, it's survival. It's a script written by fear, not vision. You weren't born to live on autopilot. You weren't built just to repeat yesterday with minor variations. That's not destiny, that's sedation. Destiny doesn't live inside your comfort zone. It doesn't hide inside the lines of what's familiar. It lives in the bold, the unknown, the daring decisions that pull you out of the loop and into the fire. And yet, most people have settled. Settled for safety. Settled for good enough. Settled for what the world told them they could have instead of what they were born to create. They've confused routine with responsibility. They think sticking to the same patterns day after day is being mature, when in reality it's a slow, quiet surrender of their deeper calling. You see it in the eyes of people who once dreamed big. There's a dullness, a flicker that used to be a fire. You ask them how life is and they say, busy or same old, like that's an achievement. But the truth is, routine has become their identity. It's predictable. It's safe. It doesn't ask much of them, and in return, they don't ask much of life. But deep down, the places they don't talk about, they know something's off. Something's missing. That hunger they used to have, it's still there, buried under obligations, buried under years of maybe later, buried under fear of shaking things up. You cannot fulfill your destiny while staying inside the same patterns that have kept you small. Routine is the cage that destiny keeps rattling from the inside. Every time you feel restless, that's not something to numb. That's something to listen to. That feeling is your higher self trying to break through the monotony and remind you you were made for more. You weren't put here to be a cog in a machine. You weren't born just to follow the rules, stay quiet, and retire safely. You were born to expand, to risk, to stretch, to express something no one else can bring into this world. Routine is seductive because it gives the illusion of control, but destiny requires surrender. It demands that you let go of who you've been so you can step into who you're meant to become. And that's terrifying for most people. So instead of facing that discomfort, they cling to what they know. They create habits and schedules and routines that give them a sense of identity. But it's not a true identity, it's just repetition. It's a loop dressed up as a life. And here's the cost: every day spent in routine at the expense of your destiny is a day where your soul atrophies. You might be checking off boxes, but you're not coming alive. You're not growing. You're not evolving. You're recycling old thoughts, replaying old beliefs, reliving the same choices, and expecting a new outcome. But destiny doesn't operate that way. It requires disruption. It requires intention. It requires waking up and asking yourself, is this who I really am? Or is this who I've learned to be? There's a voice inside you that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. That voice gets quieter every time you ignore it, every time you choose ease over growth. But it never disappears. It waits. It waits for you to finally get tired of the routine, tired of feeling numb, tired of pretending that a full schedule means a full life, tired of living beneath your potential and calling it adulthood. You can't wait for destiny to show up on your calendar. It won't fit neatly into your routine. It's not going to tap you on the shoulder while on your third Zoom call of the day and whisper, hey, now's the time. Destiny requires you to disrupt the routine, to break the cycle, to challenge what you've accepted, and to step into the uncertainty where all the magic lies. What routine offers you is predictability, but what it steals from you is passion. It tells you what to expect, but it robs you of the thrill of the unknown. Destiny doesn't give you guarantees. It gives you growth. It gives you stretch. It gives you the chance to live fully, even if that means stumbling, failing, starting over. Because that's real life. That's a life that's honest. That's a life that burns bright, not one that fades slowly and quietly in a loop of unchallenged habits. The people who light up rooms, who make an impact, who live with fire in their eyes, they don't get that way by living in routine. They get that way because they chose not to settle. They chose to disrupt the pattern, to ask more from life, to risk being misunderstood, to chase a calling no one else can see, and to step out of the cycle that most people spend their whole lives trapped in. Most people sit around waiting for inspiration like it's some kind of divine accident, like it's supposed to show up out of nowhere and strike them like lightning. They wait for a perfect morning, for the right mood, for the stars to align. But inspiration doesn't work that way. It's not some magical moment handed down by the universe. It's a decision, a choice you make, a discipline you build. And until you understand that, you'll always be a slave to how you feel instead of a master of what you create. Inspiration isn't a passive state. It's active. It's earned. It shows up when you do. It's not for the ones who wait. It's for the ones who move. The ones who step into discomfort. The ones who take action in spite of doubt, fear, and uncertainty. The people who get inspired consistently aren't the ones who feel great all the time. They're the ones who decided to show up anyway. They made a decision to push forward whether they felt like it or not. The truth is, your feelings are unreliable. They fluctuate. They're built on habits, hormones, and patterns you've unconsciously lived for years. If you're waiting to feel inspired before you start writing that book, launching that business, changing your body, building that relationship, then get comfortable, because you'll be waiting for a long time. What you feel is often a reflection of the state you've been rehearsing, not the reality you want to create. And if you let that dictate your destiny, you're letting the weakest part of you run the show. The people who achieve greatness don't rely on feelings, they rely on decisions. And one of the most powerful decisions you can make is this: I will generate inspiration from within, not borrow it, not wait for it, not chase it, generate it. Because once you understand that inspiration is something you can create on demand, everything changes. Your power comes back. You stop giving it away to your mood, your environment, or your past. You stop needing conditions to be perfect, and you start showing up as the creator of your own energy. Think about the last time you were inspired, really inspired. What was happening? Chances are you were doing something meaningful. You were stretching yourself. You were tapped into a deeper purpose. You weren't lying around waiting for motivation to fall from the sky. You were in motion. And that motion created emotion. That action created alignment. That stretch created a spark. Inspiration is born in momentum. It doesn't come before the work. It comes not found in waiting. It's found in doing. That's why so many people feel stuck. They're overthinking, overplanning, analyzing every move, trying to line up the perfect path before they take the first step. But inspiration doesn't follow logic. It follows engagement. The moment you step forward, even with uncertainty, something inside you starts to wake up. Not because you had all the answers, but because you finally said yes to the journey. Too many people confuse inspiration with excitement. They think they need to feel fired up before they start. But excitement is fleeting. It's emotional cotton candy. It gives you a quick high and then crashes. Real inspiration is deeper. It's the fire that stays lit when the hype wears off. It's the thing that gets you back up when the setback hits. And that kind of inspiration doesn't show up by accident. It's built by choice. It's built by showing up consistently, by deciding to put your purpose above your mood, by stepping into alignment with what you value even when it's uncomfortable. There will be days when you feel tired, days when nothing around you seems exciting, days when the world feels flat and gray. That's when most people check out. That's when they turn to distractions. That's when they say, I'm just not feeling it today. But that's also the moment where the champions separate themselves. Because that's the moment they make a decision to lean in, a decision to spark their own flame, a decision to not let the absence of emotion dictate the presence of action. Inspiration isn't found in the perfect quote, the perfect video, the perfect weather, or the perfect plan. It's found in the decision to move anyway, to create something even when your head is full of doubt, to make progress even when your body says rest, to lead even when your spirit feels small. That's where the real inspiration lies. Not on the sidelines, but in the arena. In the doing, in the choosing. Every time you decide to act regardless of how you feel, you strengthen the part of you that leads. You train your nervous system to respond to vision instead of emotion. You rewire your identity. You teach your body that you are no longer someone who waits. You are someone who creates. You become the source. And that changes everything. Because when you become the source of your own inspiration, you stop chasing it and you start living it. The mind is the command center. It's the ignition switch. Before the body takes a step, before your voice speaks, before your hands build or your feet move, your mind already decided where you're going. Your physiology might carry you forward, but it's your psychology that drives the direction. The body doesn't move first, the mind does. Every action you take, every habit you build, every limit you break or boundary you submit to starts with a thought, a belief, a signal. If you want to change your energy, your productivity, your life, you have to start with the mind. You can have all the talent in the world, all the strength, all the tools, but if your mind is filled with doubt, hesitation, excuses, or fear, your body won't respond with power. It will hesitate. It will hold back. It will reflect what's going on up top. You see people try to force change by changing their environment, their routines, their diets, their schedules, but they never shift the root, which is the way they think. They want new results, but they're still telling the same story in their head. It's hard. I don't feel like it. I've always been just words. Those are commands, and your body listens to every one of them. If you tell yourself you're exhausted, your body will act like it. If you say, I can't do this, your muscles will lose strength, your breath will shorten, your posture will collapse. Why? Because the body is obedient to the mind and follows orders. And most people are giving their body weak, disempowering, limiting orders day after day without even realizing it. They think they're tired because their body gave out, when really it's their mindset that collapsed first. But here's the good news, it works the other way too. When you shift your mindset, when you choose thoughts of power, purpose, hunger, and possibility, your body rises to meet that energy. You feel more alert, more alive. You walk differently, you speak differently. You show up with presence instead of passivity. The mind leads the body. Which means every time you step into a room, Every time you rise from bed, every time you face adversity, the battle isn't with your circumstances, it's with your mindset. And if you win there, everything else becomes possible. Think about elite athletes, world-class performers, leaders, people who thrive under pressure. Do you really think they're never tired, never afraid, never uncertain? Of course not. But their mindset dominates their biology. They've trained their thoughts to lead. They've taught their body how to respond to challenge with power, not panic. That doesn't happen by accident. It's a decision, a discipline, a standard. Every time you change your posture, pull your shoulders back, breathe deeper, plant your feet. You're not just shifting your body. You're sending a message to your nervous system. You're saying, I'm here, I'm present, I'm ready. And when that becomes a pattern, not just an occasional effort, your entire physiology changes, your brain chemistry changes, you activate energy, focus, courage, not because of something outside you, but because of what you decided to do internally. People think energy is just about rest or food or supplements. Those things matter, but they're not the foundation. The foundation is mental state. You can have slept 8 hours and still feel exhausted if you wake up and tell yourself, oh, another day, I don't want to do this. But if you get 5 hours of sleep and wake up saying, let's go, I've got work to do. I've got something that matters today. Your body catches up to that thought. You create energy through language, through focus, through intent. And that energy becomes fuel. Your mind is the thermostat, not the thermometer. It doesn't just reflect your conditions, it sets the tone. You choose the level. You decide if you're stepping into the day with clarity or chaos, with strength or stress, with direction or distraction. And once that decision is made, your body follows. It aligns. It adapts. It carries out the mission you've given. But most people never give their body a mission. They drift. They start the day reacting instead of deciding, scrolling instead of focusing, complaining instead of commanding. And then they wonder why their energy is low, why their progress is stuck, why their body isn't performing. The problem isn't in the body, it's in the leader. And the leader is the mind. You can rewire everything when you take back the role of the leader. When you wake up and immediately give your mind a direction. When you speak to yourself with power instead of hesitation. When you focus on what you can do instead of what you feel like avoiding. Your body is always listening. It's not lazy. It's not broken. It's waiting for you to decide, waiting for you to lead. And the moment you take control of the mind, the body unlocks its potential. It wakes up, it follows the path you set, and you stop being a prisoner to fatigue or weakness. You become the one in charge. You're not empty. You've never been empty. What you are is under-accessed, under-tapped, underutilized. There's a difference. You've got power inside you that hasn't been awakened, fuel that hasn't been ignited, and potential that hasn't even been scratched. But if you keep telling yourself that you're drained, that you're broken, that you've got nothing left, your body, your energy, your results will obey that command. What you speak becomes your state. What you focus on becomes your experience. And when you start labeling your life as burned out instead of blocked up, you shut the door on everything that's still available inside you. There is more inside you than what you're using right now. More clarity, more ideas, more passion. But the problem isn't that you don't have it. It's that you haven't accessed it. It's like having a 1,000 horsepower engine and never pushing past 40. You think, well, this is all it can do, not realizing there's an entire gear you've never shifted into. Life doesn't empty you out. It just keeps demanding a deeper version of you. And if you haven't trained yourself to go deeper, to reach further into that inner reserve, you'll confuse unfamiliarity with exhaustion. People mistake fatigue for emptiness. They say, I'm tired, but what they really mean is, I'm uninspired. I'm disconnected. I'm operating beneath my truth. When you're out of alignment with your purpose, everything feels heavier. The smallest task becomes a burden. Your energy crashes. But that crash doesn't mean you're empty. It means the access point to your real power has been neglected. You're trying to live off surface level motivation when your life is asking for soul level activation. The truth is, most people aren't using even half of what they're capable of. They've been conditioned to believe that what they've accessed so far is all that exists. That if it doesn't show up easily, it must not be there. That if it doesn't feel natural, it must be wrong. But real power isn't always comfortable. It doesn't come from ease. It comes from accessing parts of yourself that have been dormant. It comes from choosing to go deeper when everything in you wants to stop. You've got gears in your soul that haven't been engaged yet. Strength that hasn't been demanded. Vision that hasn't been stretched. But if no one ever calls it out of you, if you never place yourself in environments, relationships, and challenges that require more from you. You'll keep living as a fraction of who you really are. You'll keep calling yourself tired, and what you really are is untapped. You've seen glimpses of it. Those moments when you rose up, when you responded to a challenge that scared you, when you got focused and present, when you tapped into a flow state and realized, wait a minute, this version of me exists. That wasn't a fluke. That wasn't luck. That was fully accessed. That was what happens when you get out of your own way, when you stop negotiating with fear, when you stop settling for autopilot and demand your best self to show up. But it's not enough to have moments. You've got to build access into your lifestyle. You've got to create patterns that summon the strongest parts of you every single day. You do that by putting yourself in motion, not waiting for inspiration, not waiting for everything to line up, but choosing to move, choosing to stretch, choosing to act. Access is built through action, not through overthinking, not through excuses, not through waiting for permission. You're not here to scrape by with minimal energy and lukewarm passion. You're here to tap into something deeper, to walk with power, to live from a place of fullness, not frustration. That fullness doesn't come from the outside. It comes from deciding to stop playing small inside your own life. It comes from waking up and saying, what's inside me today that I haven't reached for yet? And then reaching, not once, every day. You've been told to rest when you're tired. That's true. But what if you're not tired? What if you're just under accessed? What if what you need isn't sleep, but alignment? Not a break, but a breakthrough. What if the fuel you're looking for doesn't come from the outside, but from reaching into the deepest part of you and pulling out the fire that's been waiting for a reason to rise? You're not missing anything. You're not behind. You're not broken. But you might be under living. You might be under leading. You might be tiptoeing through life using only what feels familiar when the next level of your life is demanding you to go far beyond comfort. What's inside you is still there. It's not gone. It's not lost. It's just waiting for you to access it fully, unapologetically, and relentlessly. Your life right now is a reflection of the patterns you've accepted, not the ones you dream about, not the ones you journal, the ones you live, the habits you repeat, the thoughts you rehearse, the emotions you allow to linger. If you want to change your energy, your focus, your results, you have to break the pattern, because every breakthrough starts with a disruption. Nothing shifts until something interrupts the rhythm that's been keeping you stuck. It's not about waiting for inspiration to hit you like a lightning bolt. It's about drawing a line in the sand and saying, I will not keep living like this. Patterns are powerful. They're built from repetition. They're reinforced by comfort. But here's the problem. Most people build patterns are designed for survival, not success. You wake up and the first thing you do is check your phone. You react. You scroll. You feed your mind with noise before it's even had a chance to wake up. That's a pattern. You tell yourself, I'll do it tomorrow. That's a pattern. You go to bed every night with a list of things you didn't finish, but you keep repeating the same cycle. That's a pattern. And no matter how much you say you want change, your patterns will always win until you break them. Breaking the pattern doesn't happen by accident. It's an intentional act. It's aggressive. It's disruptive. It requires you to jolt yourself out of the mental sleepwalk that's been dulling your energy. Sometimes that means standing up and moving your body with intensity. Sometimes that means speaking truth out loud, commanding a new standard. Sometimes it means cutting off the things you've been tolerating for too long, distractions, relationships, excuses. Whatever the method, the mission is the same. Interrupt the pattern. Snap yourself out of the hypnosis of average. You can't ignite a fire if you keep feeding it with wet wood. You keep putting more strategies, more plans, more goals on top of a foundation that's still soaked in the habits of who you used to be. And then you wonder why it won't catch. It's not the plan that's broken. It's the pattern. You've been conditioning yourself to hesitate, to doubt, to delay. And now, if you want to flip that switch, you have to stop negotiating with those old habits. You have to do something radical, something physical, something that wakes your system up and tells it, we're not doing this anymore. The fire doesn't start with a to-do list. It starts with a decision, a real decision, backed by action. Not the kind of decision people talk about to feel good for 5 minutes. The kind that reorders your life. The kind that scares you a little because you know once you make it, there's no going back. That kind of decision burns the bridge to the old version of you. That kind of decision is the match. And once you strike it, you have to protect that flame. You have to fuel it, feed it, commit to it. Breaking the pattern means becoming aware of the patterns in the first place. Most people don't even realize they're stuck. They've been living the same day for years and calling it progress. They say they're tired, but what they really are is uninvolved in their own evolution. They're not awake to the truth that everything in their life right now is something they're either creating or allowing. And once you accept that, you also accept the responsibility to create something better. You want momentum, break the pattern. You want clarity, break the pattern. You want drive, confidence, passion, progress, break the pattern. That means shifting your state. It means using your physiology to overpower your psychology. You can't think your way into power. You have to act your way into it. Move like someone who's alive. Speak like someone who's certain. Stand like someone who knows where they're going. And do it before you feel like it. The fire comes after the motion, not before. Waiting to feel ready is part of the old pattern. It's a trap. Burn it down. Patterns are comfortable because they're predictable. But that predictability is killing your fire, your edge, your hunger. You're not here to run loops. You're here to expand, to evolve. To shock your system with new energy, new intention, new presence. That means taking back control of your rituals, your mornings, your mindset, and especially your language, what you say to yourself, how you speak about your life, how you frame the situation. That's all pattern. And if it's weak, your fire will never catch. Start with one moment. One disruption, one refusal to repeat the old rhythm. That's all it takes to begin. Break the thought, break the posture, snap your fingers, clap your hands. Shout something powerful, move your body. Do whatever it takes to let your nervous system know the pattern is over. The fire is starting, and this is the version of you the world's been waiting for. Let's get something clear. This life you're living, this story you're telling yourself about being tired, burnt out, stuck, that's not the truth. That's a pattern. That's a symptom of disconnection, of playing small, of forgetting who you are and what you're made of. You're not exhausted, you're uninspired. You're not broken, you're misaligned. There's a fire inside you that hasn't burned hot in a while, but it's still there, waiting for you to stoke it with vision, with hunger, with purpose. You've been operating below your potential, not because you're lazy, but because you've been living by old rules that no longer serve the level you're destined for. Fatigue often isn't about rest. It's about the absence of meaning. When you find a mission that matters, you tap into a reserve of energy most people never discover. You stop counting the hours and start making the hours count. You stop chasing comfort and start creating impact. And all of that begins with a shift in mindset, because the mind leads the body, and when the mind is strong, focused, and locked into something bigger than comfort, the body will follow with strength you didn't even know was available. The truth is, you've settled into routine, not destiny. You've been hypnotized by the familiar, distracted by the mundane. But destiny doesn't come knocking while you're scrolling through life on autopilot. It comes alive when you break the pattern, when you interrupt the story, when you stand up and decide to take your life off repeat. Inspiration isn't a gift, it's a decision. And you get to make that decision today, right now. Not when you feel ready, not when it's convenient, but now. Because you're not empty, you're under accessed. There are parts of you you've never called forward. Strengthship you've never had to use. Leadership you've never been forced to activate. It's there. But it won't rise until you demand it. Until you move. Until you speak. Until you show the world what's been sleeping inside you. This is your moment to break free. To stop giving in to the voice that says, I can't, and rise up with the voice that says, watch me. You've got what it takes. It's not out there, it's already in you, so stop waiting. Wake up, lock in. Break the pattern, ignite the fire. Thank you for listening. Now go live like you mean it.